Alrighty, just like that. Huh? So we're here again. So Marko Papuckovski.
Yeah.
We were just talking about this. I think it was like a couple of years ago when we last sat down.
Yeah, I think it's been at least a year and a half. It was like late 2022, like mid to late 2022.
Yeah. You weren't married yet.
I wasn't married yet.
You weren't in this space where we're sitting right now.
Yeah.
And at the time, obviously we talked a little bit about Humanly and the business. And you started another business since then, and things are going still going pretty well.
Things are going good. Challenging, like businesses are challenging. We just had this conversation off camera. Like it's business is it's like bumps and hurdles and like ups and downs, but it's rewarding.
Yeah, like it's one of those ones where sometimes there are things that are wholly and solely within your control, and other things are like, okay, we're just going to throw a spanner in the works, and somebody else has like made a decision that impacts your business, and I guess that's what Marko and I are referring to, a friend of ours who had a bit of a spanner thrown in the works.
Yeah. You wake up on a Monday morning, you're like, oh yeah, off to another great week, I'm ready to go, and then you get like the shock of your life, and you're like, shit, what do I do? How do I adjust?
And those setbacks, right? Like I think mentally, right? Like it always it makes you question things, because like you could have spent maybe 5-6 years working on this business or this particular idea, and then you have this massive setback, and then it's like, okay, do I want to go through with all this again?
Yep.
Or what do you do next, right? And I think that then goes more into like those identity questions when you try and move out of one industry. I think that's what we were talking about last time. Was, from my example, move out of the automotive industry and you're trying to rework out who you are.
And I think it affects people at every level. Like I was listening to an interview with Tucker Carlson. He interviewed this Russian billionaire, self-made guy, Andrei Meltichenko or something like that. And the guy's worth like $15 billion. And he's like, he produces fertilizer for the agricultural industry in Eastern Europe. And he's had $2 billion of his assets seized because of the war in Ukraine and Russia. And Tucker Carlson, he asks him like, why, how are you not angry? He goes, how can I be angry at something I can't control? It's like being angry at the rain. It's like, it's not going to change anything. Yeah. And you think like it only affects the little guys and small businesses, but it happens in huge, like I remember hearing a saying, there are devils at every level. It's like when you're first starting out, you have certain problems. And then when you get to like a certain level, you're like, now there's new problems. And then you get to a bigger level, now there's bigger problems. And there's always problems. Yeah.
I like to say that your capacity to handle the problems dictates, your earning potential.
100%.
Because like, when you start a business, like you have to push yourself to learn certain things. Yep. And it's your ability to handle those, those little hurdles of learning, okay, how do I start a business? Yep. How do I register for my ABN? How do I, come up with a name? What's my marketing strategy? How do I get clients? What is the actual business model of how you create money, right? That's one problem to be solved. Yeah. And then, as your business, if it does well and it continues to grow, then you get new problems, which might be, you bring on somebody to help you with your business. Yeah. Or you bring in outside influencers to help you with your business. And then sometimes they're not very helpful. Yeah. Sometimes it could be the opposite, right? Like you employ somebody who is a disaster, and then you've got to go through that process of like not only addressing the situation with that person, but then also the damage
control
for all the damage that has been done, right?
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things like I always use the example of like when you look at a listed company, right? A lot of times people will go, oh, like how cool would that be to have a listed company? But it's like nobody starts and goes, oh, I'm going to list. Yeah. Right. Everybody goes, okay, I've got a business and this is my plan. Right. Yeah. And like, I often use Tim, one of my friends, who's CEO of Airtasker. Like they listed on the Australian Stock Exchange, and it was like that idea was literally him, one of my other high school mates, Ivan, sitting around in an apartment about to move stuff, furniture and stuff, because they're moving it to a different apartment. And it was like, there has to be a better way to do this. Yeah. And that's how the idea for Airtasker came about. Yeah. And then it was like, then they got the tech side sorted and this and that. Yeah. And like they started to build and build and build, where it then became, okay, now we're pitching to investors and taking private funding. Yeah. And then, had Seven West and all these other companies investing in their product. And then it was like, okay, well, we could either do another round of private funding, or we can now take the company public. And
Yeah.
and that's what they did. And now, and then it's like, okay, the next stage is like, okay, we've gone through all of these investment rounds to give us the capital to keep investing back into the business, and paying people and doing all that sort of stuff. But now the business actually has to be able to turn its own gears and bring a return. And that was like, that's a different phase of the business as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's always interesting because, I don't think anybody really starts with like that big of an idea, unless you've done it before. Like if you've done it before, and you've taken a company public, and it'd be pretty easy for those guys to turn around and go, okay, this is the next thing I'm going to work on, and this is what I'm going to do, because you've done it already.
Exactly, yeah. And that's my experience with starting the new business, is like, because I've built humanly and made those mistakes, and it took me like 3-4 years of messing things up, and like, how are we going to acquire clients, and how are we going to deliver, and what tools are we going to use? And now I know all of that. So building it for the second time is much faster, and I can avoid all the pitfalls and all the mistakes, and I know what's needed and what's not needed.
Yeah.
So
okay, let's probably start. I'm coughing today. Sorry, guys.
Some water?
I will. Yeah, hang on a sec. What I wanted to sort of start with is and this was a nice, cool little thing, was I always love I think I've talked about this before, but like, my definition of networking is when I can connect two people that have a need.
Yeah.
So you as a business, you have a need for customers, and then I had a friend who was Jake O'Driscoll, shout out to Jake. Was having some issues health-wise, and I just said, hey, why don't you have a chat with Marko? It may or may not, he may or may not be able to help you. I don't know. But like, I know that Marko knows a lot about, different health factors and holistic things in this space. Maybe you can get some things done, and then it might help to sort of work out what the issue is. And then, and then you mentioned, shout out to Tom. Tom also reached out, Tom Nolan, and it's cool to see, like that there's an opportunity for, well, people are watching, first of all. And the second thing is that there's always an opportunity for me to connect people, based on who I know and who I've spoken to. If there's a need for something, that's my definition of networking. So I'm really grateful that I could do that. But I guess talk to us about, how Humanly is going, and,
Yeah, it's going good. We've grown the team. We have, we've brought on another practitioner. So for us, the biggest challenge is it's not so much finding clients, because there's so many people out there struggling with their health. Like there's a plethora of clients. It's just, it's finding the practitioners who are experienced enough to be able to treat those clients, right? So we have Michelle, who's on board, and she's had like 25 years of experience in reading functional testing, diagnosing properly, building treatment plans, the whole shebang. Like our treatment plans are extremely detailed. We break down every single marker that we find in your blood work or in your microbiome test. And finding another practitioner who can do that is extremely challenging. Like it's not easy. So we have found one, and we brought her on this week. We actually just signed the agreement on Friday.
Hey.
So she's on board. She's ready to work with some clients and help people. So we're growing the team slowly. And like with Humanly, the difficult thing is we don't really want to scale to a point where we can't give clients attention, because there are very complex cases, and health is a really, really important thing, right? Like for the people signing up, for us, it's like, oh yeah, this is another client. But for them, it's a huge risk, and it's a huge, trust thing, and they need help. Like many of them need, like Tom, for example, it's like there's a problem to fix, and his career pretty much is, if he's not healthy, he can't fight.
Well, so he can't train,
He
right?
can't train, therefore he can't fight. Therefore he can't make a living, and therefore his entire, like, whatever he's been doing for the past 20 years of his life that he's dreamed towards maybe falls apart. So it's a very important thing. So we just want to make sure that the standards are there, like in terms of delivery. So it's growing. It's going good. We've, man, some of the things that we're doing is really cool. Like it's funny watching the industry, because there's people like Gary Brecker now who are talking about like MTHFR gene mutations. And that's been a thing, like we've known about that for 15 years in the medical health, like in the functional health industry. DNA testing, like we've been doing that for years and years now, epigenetics. But it's all becoming more and more popular.
Yeah.
I think COVID helped, because I think the public trusts doctors less, and pharma less, and so they're looking for alternatives, which is good. Ultimately, it creates competition, and the market dictates. Right. So in a free economy, you go, well, if people don't trust big pharma companies are going to have to change their practices. But it's good. There's been a growth in the health interests in the health industry, which comes with like a lot of positive things, but also a lot of confusion. So when I talk to people, they're just all confused. And many of them are like, I don't know what is healthy, what's unhealthy. Like, what do I eat? One person says meat is horrible. The other person says, kale is bad for you. Like, what do I eat? How do I actually achieve good health? And it's a lot more simple than people realize. But the unfortunate thing with like social media is that the people who are actually experts in the field are quite reasonable, and also in the way that they speak. And being reasonable doesn't always get you attention.
Yeah.
Because the answer is always like, well, it depends. Depends on case by case.
Yeah.
For this person, meat might be really healthy. For this person, maybe not just yet. So like but no one wants to hear that. Everyone wants to hear the like
silver
hook,
bullet.
right? So it's a hook. Like when people create content, like what's the first thing? Well, hook them. We want to hook them in the first 3 seconds and then, engage. And then that's how you grow a following, and that's how you turn that following into money or whatever it is you want to do. So it's hard. It's confusing for people. And I think like ultimately people just need more and more education when it comes to health.
Yeah.
Like proper education.
Well, and you're not going to get that from a 1 minute reel or,
no, 100%.
Or a YouTube short. Like this is I went through, I think, last time when we spoke, I went through this phase where I started producing a lot of like short form content.
Yep.
And I was thinking, I'll promote the podcast. And then, I sort of got to this point where I was just like, okay, why the fuck am I doing this?
Yeah.
Right? Because like, and I got fairly adept at it. Like it was taking me maybe an hour to put together a short, right? But then it's like, it's also the listening time. It's like, and I have this thing where it's like, when I listen to a story, it's like, okay, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
Like, and I keep like, the reality is like Instagram doesn't care whether something's perfect to you or not. Like it's caring about what's your output.
Yeah.
And, is the hook engaging enough? And like, there's different metrics that will define, whether something goes viral or not. And some of them did really well. And it was just like, okay, but like, what sort of benefit is this actually bringing to me? And then I sort of realized that, okay, people just need to stop being lazy. Like I consume long form content more so than I consume short form content.
Yeah.
And so it was like, I sort of then went back to, okay, no, I'm just going to enjoy doing the podcast.
Yeah.
Have the conversations. And then, if people, I don't know if it sounds horrible. Well, when I think about it, it does sound maybe a little bit arrogant, right? But I don't mean it in this way, right? But I think, I want people to actually appreciate the person and what they're saying in its full form.
Yeah.
So me going and pulling a story, while that might be exciting or engaging for some people, and it's really easy to consume, you're not going to get all the other information and all the other benefits of actually just listening to the full conversation.
Yeah.
So like I always get pulled in two directions about this, because it's like, okay, but on the one hand, if you do focus on pushing some of those messages and doing the short form content, you probably reach more a wider audience. And it's like, okay.
Well, you can go wide and shallow or like smaller and deep.
Yeah.
It depends what you want.
Yeah.
Right. And like people are very much obsessed with the vanity metrics, but if you've got 4,000 subscribers, that's 4,000 people. Imagine fitting this gym with 4,000 people. That's a heck of a lot of people listening to your message. Yeah. Even 40 is a lot.
Yeah.
So I think like people just get lost in the metrics.
Yep.
But yeah, you don't need a huge audience. You just need like a very dedicated fan base. And I listen to some long form content on YouTube, like 3 hours long.
Yep.
People would find it boring, but like I hang on to every word. I want to hear exactly what's being said, and I rewind it and rewatch it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think like, I think short form content is like oversimplified. And ever since we kind of did the last episode, I haven't really been posting much. Everyone's like, why aren't you posting? I'm like, I don't want to. Like, I'd rather write email content to our newsletters. I'd rather like talk to people one-on-one, like let them book in my calendar and I'll talk to them one-on-one. Like I don't need to be.
Yeah. It's where's the value coming from?
Where's the value? Like what am I providing? There's already 1,000 influencers posting 1,000 things about health. What am I giving to the marketplace by doing that?
Yeah.
Nothing. Like I'm just another voice. I know it might sound lazy and whatever, but like I'm just not interested. I'm more interested in talking to people, like real people,
Well, I've always had this idea of and I even put this the same way when I think about the podcast, whereas like the body work speaks for itself.
Yep.
So, I reckon that tipping point probably came for me around, say, once I'd done like 50 episodes, right? People were sort of like, oh, wow, you've done 50 episodes.
Yeah.
Like it was like that sort of was like the tipping point. And then now it's like 140 something.
Yeah.
And it's like, like I have people reach out and say, hey, I want to, come and talk about this.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Let's schedule it in. We'll talk about it. Like, but I only do one a week.
Yeah.
Like I got to balance my time as well, because
absolutely
at the end of the day, this is also a passion project. So from that perspective, it's like, sometimes, I might go through a week where Oh, my throat's killing me today. Anyway,
Yeah, everyone's a bit.
it's just like something stuck there. But anyway, yeah, I go through a period where maybe like there's a week where I book like 2 or 3, but then it's like I need to take 2 or 3 weeks off after.
Yeah.
So I'd rather just be consistent and just do
One a
one a
week.
week.
Yeah.
You know, and then I like, and it's funny because like I've got like all these half-started lists. Like I might have one in like a notebook where I've like written down all these people that I need to get on the podcast.
Reach out to, yeah.
And then it's like, and then I started one on my phone, and it's like, oh shit, I got to find the other one just to check if there were any names that were missing.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, like there's always a list of people that I'm waiting to come on or that I want to reach out to chat to.
Yeah.
So that part of it's been really, it's encouraging.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, there comes a point with anything where the body of work will speak for itself.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same thing, you know, with the when you're talking about people's health, is that at the end of the day, the amount of people that have had, you know, it's the success stories that will dictate, you know, how well the business is done. Because when those start to add up, people can't deny the body of work. They can say, oh, well, we think it's this or we think it's that. It's like, okay, well, like, give us your cases, give us your case studies.
Yeah.
You know, and let's talk about that. Like, I think ultimately, when it comes to health choices and things like that, the only time that people really start to care is when it impacts themselves.
Yeah, like there's a certain pain point, and everyone's different. Everyone has a different threshold of pain that they're willing to tolerate. You know, for some people, it's like, oh, I have a little bit of bloating, and I want to get it fixed.
Yep.
Because their standard of like they want to operate at a very efficient level, and then some people, it's just interesting, man. Like human psychology is so interesting. I've realized like the most important part, the first and most important part of health is like people's willingness to change. It's their mindset, you know, and like this is like the whole growth versus fixed mindset. Like some people don't want to, well, not that they don't want to, maybe they don't have the tools, or maybe they're not inspired enough, maybe they're not enough pain. And like sometimes they're just not ready for that.
Yeah.
And we can give them all the tools and they're just not ready to implement it. So it takes like a certain level of pain for some people when it comes to health. And like I was listening to a thing with Michaela Peterson, and she was saying how she only eats steak. People are like, how can you only do that? It's like, well, that's what it takes for her to feel her best and be off of medication and not have to deal with her autoimmune issues. So she's willing to trade one thing for another.
Yeah.
Right? Like life is really a game of trade-offs. It's like I'm trading this for that. And you have to give one thing up to get the other thing. And so with health, it's a game of trade-offs. It's like, well, I'm willing to give up. What am I willing to give up to feel better? Are you willing to give up alcohol? Are you willing to give up ice cream at night? Are you willing to give up? Like, what are you willing to give up in order to achieve those results? Because you can't have both. Never in life, like, do you get to have everything?
Yeah.
You know? So health is interesting because it's actually quite simple. You know, it's not as complicated as, and most people that talk to me already know what they need to be doing. You know, or some of what they need to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, some like they already know some of the better decisions that they can make, but for some reason they're not making them.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I think it's like that, having the data as well. It's
proof.
It's proof, right?
Yeah.
So, I used to wear the Aura ring and track my sleep and do all that sort of stuff. And when you actually see, you know, okay, if I slept late or I ate late, you know, and the next day you look at your score and you go, oh shit, that really did make an impact.
Yeah.
Then it allows you to make a better informed choice.
100%, yeah.
Versus, my wife would love this, if my wife said it to me, or if my mum had said it to me when I was a kid, you know, you just sort of throw it out the window because, you know, it's like an old wives' tale kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But now when there's objective hard data, you just go, okay. So my wife will always say, you know, you're happy to listen to somebody on a podcast tell you these things, but you're not happy to listen to me tell you these things. I'm like, well, you don't bring the proof.
It's true.
They'll bring the proof.
Yeah. And sometimes that's why we run functional testing. Yeah. Sometimes we already know what protocol we need, but we do it for the patient because when they see the data, they go, oh, okay, I understand. You know, like if we do a blood test and we see that someone's like, vitamin D levels are low, or their B12 is low, or their whatever it is, right? And we go, well, hey, you need to actually eat more protein because that's just here's the data.
Yeah,
like here's the proof, and then it's undeniable, right? It's like, and most people will, when they see the proof, when they see the evidence, they'll do it.
Yep.
I'm like that. I'm stubborn. Yeah. So it's like prove to me before I jump. Right? Which sometimes is a good thing, but yeah, it's data is helpful.
Yeah,
that's why we do things the way that we do it, because it's extremely personalized. It's based on evidence, like we're not guessing. And you know, when we build those systems for you, those protocols, like they're extremely personal. Like everything from We have over, at the moment, we've got 48 patients going through a treatment program. Not a single protocol is the same.
Yeah, wow.
They're all different.
And obviously the reasons why they've come to you are different as well, right? Yeah.
Well, similar but different. Like most of them have some type of immune. It's funny. Like health is how do I put this? Like everyone's so different, but the same at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, because humans have we all have certain things that we need. Like for example, let's talk nutrition, right? Like in nutrition, in biochemistry, when you do a nutrition degree or when you do biochem, there's the idea of essential versus non-essential nutrients. It's like two separate classes. So like essential means that we have to get them from an outside source. We can't create them ourselves.
Okay.
Non-essential means I can create them.
Yep.
So like carbohydrates are a non-essential nutrient because you can turn other nutrients into carbohydrates if you need to.
Yep.
Right? Whereas protein is essential. You can't create it.
Yeah.
You can break down muscle tissue to create it. It's like if you have a higher need for protein because you're pregnant or injured or you're older, like you're 40 and above, the only way you can get it is you either eat it or you're going to break down muscle tissue. So that's essential. You have to get that in. There's no other way to get it. Water is essential.
Yeah.
You can't create water. You have to drink it.
Yeah.
So like it's actually very simple and we're all the same when it comes to basic physiological needs. We all need to sleep.
Yep.
Some of us more than others, some of us less, but we all need a certain level, right? We all need to drink water. We all need to eat enough food and have enough calorie intake and nourishment. These are all basic things. But then beyond that, there's like all these like little details, and this person has like a mix of symptoms that can't really be defined into one disease. And so we have to treat them for multiple things all at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's like it gets complex as you look deeper and deeper, but on a fundamental level, we all require the same things.
Yeah. And it's also, I always find health to be a very interesting one, simply from the perspective of there's a difficulty in articulating like how you feel. So if you've got an ailment and you're trying to describe that to a doctor as an example, there's two reference points here. There's the reference point of me that's actually feeling the symptom and me trying to articulate what that symptom is. And then there's the interpretation of the healthcare professional to turn around and say, okay, I believe that this is connected to X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes, you know, and that's why there's such a big focus on medical history, because there's so many things that, you know, when you're thinking about things, you miss it and you don't really think about it. And so, but that little bit of detail could be something huge, right? And like I can even give you an example. Like currently, like so, I've had like this issue with one of my teeth, and it's had a root canal in it. And for the longest time, you know, I always used to like I've got a little like your pituitary gland, I guess, and it felt like it was always swollen, right? And so then it was like, okay, usually like, you know, when you get like, say, whether it's a cold or a flu, or if you had glandular fever, like you feel like the nodules under your neck, under your jaw to be like swollen, right? And for me, like this, I've had this one that's been more persistent over the last couple of years. And what I've sort of, and I could be totally wrong here, this is my conjecture, right? Was because after like I was starting to get a little bit of pain on that tooth, where it was like, it felt like, you know, there was pressure there. Right. And so obviously you go to the dentist said, okay, well, you've had a root canal done on this tooth. Like it's been how long now? It's probably 10, 15 years. And as a result of that, like, you know, sometimes there are different, you know, nerve endings that might maybe go off in a different pathway, or if it wasn't like, you know, fully clean, or sometimes over time, like there could be a breakdown and obviously an infection can occur. And that's that's what could be causing that additional bit of pressure. And it was like, okay. And he was like, you might feel like, you know, there's something, you know, on the side, like if you see an abscess pop up or something like that, well, obviously that's the infection coming to the surface, right?
Yeah.
And then for me, it's like over these past few weeks where I've been so much more conscious of it, I'm like, oh, this little ball here is actually right under that tooth.
Yeah.
So I can actually feel like that there's a reason why there's been that ball there for all this time. Like perhaps it was only small sometimes, and maybe obviously when you get sick and the glands do swell, but I can actually feel that little ball there. And when I like rub on it and push on it, my tooth will get more sore.
Yeah.
So I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you finally get it together, and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah, when you put the pieces together.
Yeah.
We had a case like that. This lady from Canada came to us and she had all these boils on her skin.
Wow.
And they'd been there for like decades, 20 years or so. And like doctors had tried prednisone creams and different steroid drugs and nothing really worked. And I was just talking to her and I was asking about medical history. I said, hey, like, is there autoimmune in the family? You know, what's, and her mum is celiac. And there's a condition called dermatitis herpetiformis, which is like a skin manifestation of celiac disease.
Oh, wow.
So it's boils and psoriasis and whatever. And I said, I think we need to cut out gluten. No, actually, I'm almost certain we need to cut out gluten because if your mum is celiac, then you are at least half celiac because you have half of her genes. And there's a group of genes called HLA genes, human leukocyte antigens, that pass down, and you can get a heterozygous copy or a homozygous copy from mum and dad or whatever, right? And you might not be a true celiac, but you're on the spectrum, like where gluten does cause immune reactions for you or immune activation. And so we cut out gluten, and within 40 days, the boils were pretty much gone.
Wow. And how long was she dealing with this problem for?
Like 20 years.
And she just
never put the pieces together.
Yeah.
And no doctor put the pieces together because, unfortunately, most doctors aren't trained to think in that way.
Yeah.
They're not actually trained to think, like many of them will still say to this day, diet won't make a difference, which is absolutely absurd. It's idiotic. Like, I don't know how a medical practitioner who's somewhat intelligent can say diet doesn't make a difference. It's like, well, what else does then?
Yeah.
If this is what I'm consuming and this is the matter, the literal, like the carbon, like this is what makes me me, how can it not make a difference?
Yeah.
And how come it makes a difference for celiac patients but not for any other autoimmune? And how come what do you mean? How come it makes a difference for diabetics and for no one else? How can you say such a stupid blanket statement? Like it just doesn't make any sense. And like, and what is the downside if I change my diet?
Yeah.
Like, why not let me try? You know, so if a lot of the time, like a patient with rheumatoid arthritis or whatever will walk into a rheumatologist's office and say, I'm thinking of trying this diet. And the doctor will say, well, diet doesn't make a difference. So, okay, but what's the worst that could possibly happen if they cut out junk food? Let them try. Like, what's the downside? Why not motivate them to become healthier overall?
This is where it starts to get into that, you put your tinfoil hat on and you go, okay, is it incompetence? Is it negligence?
You could say that and people will be like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Okay. But like, look at the history of pharma.
Yeah.
You know, there's a movie called Dark Waters. I think it's called Dark Water or Black Water, one or the other. But it's about the Teflon. Do you know this story? Do you know how Teflon was created and what it is? Like, non-stick pans?
Yeah.
So Teflon was created by the company 3M, which still exists.
Yep.
And
sticky tape.
It was sticky tape, right?
Post-it notes.
Yeah, it was created during World War II, or World War I or World War II, one of those wars, because all great things come from wars, like ingenuity. And it was put on the outside of tanks, and it would essentially everything that would go on the tank would slide off.
Yep.
Right? So it wouldn't damage the tank. And then the war ended, and they were like, well, we've created this really resilient thing. It's a carbon bond. It never disintegrates. Nothing can break it down. It's extremely strong. What are we going to use it for? Like, how can we commercialize this?
Yeah.
So they started to create Teflon pans.
Yep.
And the ads were like, oh, you can cook an egg without it sticking. And so everyone was like, wow, this is amazing. So everyone started buying Teflon pans until there was this one farmer in the US he lived near the factory that manufactured Teflon, and all of his cows were dying. All the people in the town were losing their teeth. And like he went after this pharmaceutical company for decades. And like eventually he won the case. But they knew all along. They had all the data, all the paperwork, all the everything. And they knew all along the damage that they were doing, and they just kept it quiet.
Yeah.
And this was only like 30 years ago.
Yeah, wow.
And so it's like, well, what humans are inherently, like we're sinners, right? Like we have our faults.
Yeah.
And so why, if pharmaceutical company is made up of humans, why would you think that they're like infallible?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't someone operate on greed? Why not?
Yeah.
You know,
that's right. Like,
so why do you just trust inherently? Why don't you question it? Like, what? And what's so bad with eating better food? Like, who wins? You.
Yeah.
No one wins. Like, there's no one. I'm not profiting by telling you to eat less junk food.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you to do it for your own benefit. So it's like, you can say it's a conspiracy, but it's funny. It's like anytime you come out with something that's somewhat the truth, there are conspiracies out there, but like something conspiracy. Okay, cool. Like,
yeah, it's a way to sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah. All right, cool, man. Like, go eat donuts for breakfast.
Yeah.
Like, go eat Kellogg's. Because they're a multi-billion-dollar corporation.
Yeah.
Like, but they're
not there to make money.
They don't know your name. Like, they don't know who you are.
They're there to sell you a product.
Yeah. And like, yeah, I talk about this also with like breakfast foods, because a lot of our patients are like, I don't know what to eat for breakfast. I'm like, just eat food.
Yeah.
Just eat your leftovers for dinner. Why does there have to be a whole category of breakfast foods?
Yeah.
Because how do you compete in a marketplace? You create a category of its own. You know, so like there's a whole category of breakfast foods.
Yeah.
And like what we have been trained to believe is breakfast food is actually like horrible for us. What are cornflakes? It's just corn. It's not even food. It's a food-like product. It's not actually a food.
Yeah.
It's edible. It won't kill you straight away, but it's not good for you.
Mm.
And we had a patient from New Zealand who we wanted to kind of prove this to. And so we said, we're going to send you a continuous glucose monitor. So it's a thing that you kind of stick on your arm, and there's an app that comes with it, and you wear it for 2 weeks. And every time it continuously monitors your glucose levels. And you can see how what you're eating is affecting your spikes in glucose. And that's one of the ways that we can educate our patients. We had a patient from Canada. She's a nurse. She already knew like a lot about health. We got her to start doing continuous glucose monitoring. She had one day she was like, I ate the same breakfast, except this time I had an iced tea afterwards. And my glucose levels like shot up through the roof.
Yeah, full of sugar.
Full of sugar, you know? And she's like, I thought iced tea was healthy. I'm like, no, why would you think that? Like, or fruit juice.
Just a note on that. Right? So for any females that have gone through pregnancy, you know, they obviously do a test to see if you got pregnancy diabetes.
Yeah.
And my wife, I think, I can't remember which pregnancy it was. That's the joys of having too many children. But anyway, but on one of them, it must have been like the first one of Cadence, right? Because the doctor said, you know, okay, tomorrow we're going to give you the test for the pregnancy diabetes. And this is, you know, what we recommend that you eat. Right. And the stuff that she was to eat beforehand was stuff that she wouldn't normally fucking eat anyway. It was like just bread and like orange juice and like that kind of stuff. And then so the first time that she did the test, she nearly failed. Like it was like she was on the cusp, and so the obs was like pretty worried, and he's just like, okay, we'll have to test you again. And Andrew and I we had a conversation about it, and I just said, well, next time just eat what you normally eat.
Yeah.
Right. Let's not follow the list.
Mm.
And then she didn't have an issue.
Yep.
Right. But isn't it funny? Like, you know, it's like you're following the prescription of like, okay, eat these foods before your test. But like her system, wasn't used to that.
Yeah.
And so it's already, the blood sugar is probably already spiking from the carbs and all the other stuff. And then you go and add, you know, like however many mils of that sugary syrup that they give you. And of course you're almost pre-diabetic.
Yeah. Well, do you know what the difference in sugar is between a diabetic person and a non-diabetic person?
No.
It's 1 teaspoon of sugar in the bloodstream.
One teaspoon of sugar in the bloodstream.
So 1 teaspoon.
Yeah. Across the 6 or 7 liters of blood they have.
Yeah. That's the difference.
It's not a lot.
It's not a lot. So the body works in like very small. This is again something that people don't. They're like you can have everything in moderation. It's like no, not for some people.
Yeah.
A celiac patient can't have gluten in moderation.
Yeah.
They can't have any. They can't even like cross contaminate.
Mm.
A diabetic can't have certain things in moderation. Like it's just a hard no for some people.
Wow.
It's like, well, you know, if you take how much volume of a pharmaceutical drug do you take for it to have an effect? It's like, hey, people who have dropped acid before, how much acid did you have to take? Like that much.
Yeah, it's not
right to have a huge effect on the body. So the body or like how many sperm does it take to make a baby?
1 out of how many million?
Yeah. So sometimes with some people, like this is what the biochemistry works in a lock and key mechanism. So it's like it doesn't take much. It takes a little bit to unlock that cascade of reactions. And then you end up with symptoms.
Yeah.
Right. So for a celiac patient, like having a tiny amount of gluten is enough to cause headaches and digestive distress and all sorts of issues for them for weeks, for like 2 weeks.
Yep.
So it's like, again, people don't realize the power of food and how good it can make you feel, but also how horrible the wrong choices can make you feel.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Such a small thing, right? When you think about it, like the balance.
Yeah.
To get it right.
Well, not really. It's easy. Just eat real food.
Yeah.
Just eat stuff that doesn't come out of a packet and learn to cook. No, honestly, because we've forgotten how to cook. And so what have we done? We've handed over cooking to industry.
Yeah.
And so we've gone, I don't want to cook myself, so I'll rely on industry to cook for me. And so what they do is they cook it in the most efficient way. You know, so like cereal for breakfast is just, there's no cooking required. Yeah. It's already being processed for you.
Yeah. And then you got to think, what are they got to add to those things to keep it in that state where it can actually have a shelf life, right?
Yeah. So like you've got to make, it's so simple. if you go back in time, like when I go to Macedonia and visit my grandparents, it's like they just have an inherent understanding of what's healthy and not healthy because it's been part of growing up, like cooking food, preparing food, growing food, eating real food. They just know what health is. And then we lose that. And we've lost that in the Western world like quite a lot because we're like overfed but malnourished, and everyone's eating ultra processed foods because we're so busy.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I always use this analogy. It's like when you're young, the thing you want most is chances are if you're a male, it's money.
Yeah.
Right. And then you might chase that money so hard and work yourself so hard that you end up spending all that money on your health.
Yeah.
Right. Trying to recover.
I had a mentor that used to say to me, if you think health is expensive, try being sick.
Yeah.
So like, especially for business owners, what's the one thing that separates you from everyone else? How much stress can you tolerate? So how resilient is your physiology to stress? And how long can you continue working at this capacity versus the next person before you have a heart attack or an aneurysm or a fucking blood clot or whatever it is that you're going to struggle from?
Yeah.
Because when you start adding in like stress and poor nutrition and lack of exercise and sleep apnea and alcohol intake and then all the drugs that come along with like life, right? They're risk factors. I was listening to, I forget his surname. His first name is Max. He's a journalist, reporter, and his mum struggled with dementia, and he really like had a hunger to learn about it. And dementia and Parkinson's and most of these diseases are actually metabolic diseases.
Yeah. Was that the one with Huberman? Is that the one where he's talking about diabetes of the brain? He's like,
diabetes of the brain. Yeah, type 2 diabetes.
I think I listened to that one as well. Yeah.
How amazing is that?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's important, it's reframing the way we look at these ailments and conditions, because a lot of the times we're always like the way that I sort of have seen we like the way that people try and treat it in the medical profession at the present moment. It's like you're treating the symptom, not necessarily treating the cause. And I've given this example before. My mum's had some mental health traumas, and the first time that she had to go to hospital, they gave her obviously the drugs that help with like the schizophrenia and that style of thing. But we overlooked one thing, was that years ago my mum had a thyroid issue.
Yep.
And she had to have her thyroid killed off with like a radioactive treatment.
Yep.
Which means you then need to take supplemental iodine.
Yep.
Right. And so then when my mum went downhill, she'd stopped taking anything.
Yep.
Right. And so obviously when you're not taking iodine, like that then creates an issue for her, because there's a hormone imbalance.
Yep.
Right. Or like a chemical imbalance in terms of like what's going on in her physiology.
Yep.
And so, you give her these drugs that, then help with some of the symptoms, but you still haven't addressed some of the root cause, which is that she's gone off the iodine.
Yeah.
And then it was only after she had to go back into hospital the second time that I was like, okay, what about this? And I was like, oh shit, okay, we didn't know about that. And so that's why I always think about the history thing, is because and until it affects you, like I learned so much about mental health conditions and things like that going through that, right? And that wasn't me being affected, it was my mum being affected, but because I love her and and all these other things that you really want to get yourself educated to know. And like it probably, to a healthcare professional, like when you're probably dealing with people that don't care, not to say don't care, but maybe just don't know how to find the information for themselves. They're probably going, why is this guy telling me what to do? I'm like, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying, have we looked at this? Have we looked at that? Like, these are all the things that I want to be sure that have been covered.
Yeah.
From my own, research and understanding and just reading, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
well, mental health's an interesting one because again, like we've done this thing where we've separated mental health and physical health when really it's just health. Yeah. Right. So if you are struggling with anxiety or depression, like anxiety is a great one. It's like, well, have we looked at thyroid? Have we done T3, T4, reverse T3, thyroid antibodies? Schizophrenia is a big one, and psychosis is a big one. Like severe B12 deficiency causes psychosis. Wow. So do you have enough nutrition coming in? Yeah. Are you underweight? Do you have celiac disease? Are you not absorbing things? Do you have colitis or Crohn's or digestive issues where you're not actually assimilating these nutrients properly so your brain can have enough resources to create neurotransmitters? Yeah. Sorry, I'll just interject here because you made me think of something, right? This is a memory that just came back to the surface for me. So when my mum used to obviously cook at home, right? Yeah. And there was a period where everything she cooked was so salty. Yeah. Like too much salt, right? Yeah. And when I think back on that, it was like, okay, well, if you think about where you can get your iodine from, iodized salt. Yeah. And so
like her body obviously had this craving.
Yeah.
Because to her, she was like, oh, it's okay. Just eat it with rice. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
But I was like, I can't even eat it. It's that salty.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, like I think there are a bunch of things, you know, that maybe naturally, you know, when you're in tune with your body knows certain things that you're missing.
Yeah.
And maybe it impacts your taste buds in that particular way.
Yeah.
But that just was one thing that you just made me think about when you're talking about that.
The human body is pretty amazing, man. Like people think it's a lot less resilient than it is. Like it will find ways to survive. And if you actually listen to it, if you're intuitive enough to start listening to your body and not ignoring it. And like as an athlete, I ignored my body for years. That's how I ended up in trouble with my health because I pushed through the pain and pushed through the symptoms and just turned up to training.
Yep.
Eventually that causes issues. Like it's actually, I've realized now it's better to be a bit of a, like not hypochondriac, but to be more when your shoulder starts to hurt or you get a niggling pain, you're like, oh, I got to address that.
Yeah.
Versus just ignoring it and then ending up with a more severe injury down the line. So if you listen to your body, you'll find a lot of answers. If you like take the time and have some stillness and slow down and go, okay, what do I need here? Like, what am I doing?
That's something I actually really enjoy doing. You know, so when I go to like a normal weightlifting style gym or whatever, I'll be this dude that's doing all these really weird movements, like functional style movements. But it's just like, you know, sometimes it's just like you got to feel where your body hurts.
Yeah.
And then like do movements that sort of, you know, warm that area up and address that sort of thing. Because injuries, like I think one of the biggest things that a lot of athletes don't think about is compensations. You know, like so I was having this conversation with a jiu-jitsu athlete before, or just over Instagram. We were just chatting, and he was like, "Yeah, like you're half my age, right? He's half my age, and yeah, I get sore. You know, especially if I've rolled hard or whatever, I get sore." And he's like, "Yeah, but I'm like half your age, and I'm like I move like." You like in the sense of like I get sore and I'm only 20, and I'm like, okay, you gotta start thinking about these things, because you have a small injury, like, you know, a common one would be like, let's say you roll your ankle, right? So people roll their ankle all the time, and then you'll just keep training, or you might get like, you know, straight foot locked or whatever, and you don't think about it. But then the next thing you know is you tweak your knee, right? Because after rolling your ankle, you know, your shin or your calf is a little bit tight. And that injury then progresses up to the knee, because the next time you think that, oh, I can handle this, or this movement's okay, my range of motion was fine, but because it was a little bit tighter, something in your knee goes. And it might only be a very small little, you know, oh, that feels uncomfortable. And then the next thing you know, you're walking a little bit differently, just because you're compensating for that injury. And then your hip goes. Right. So, and I give you a real world example of this. My dad has had both knees replaced. Right. And the problem, because my dad took so long to address the issue, my dad was like walking with like a bit of a limp. And so what's happened is that's caused unnecessary wear and tear in his hip joint, right? So over time, like those compensations, they add up. If you don't address the issue, right, you just end up just the injury progresses. And in the same way, like we think about in jiu-jitsu, right? When we talk about an armbar, right, what are we trying to do? In any joint lock, what are we doing? We're isolating the joint above and below to get the break on the joint that we want. So you think about an injury. If you want to address the injury, you can't just address the joint. You need to address above and below. Because that's how injuries progress. You know, and even like
physiological health is the same. Like your not just physical injuries, like a joint, like a knee injury or whatever, like inflammation, for example. My father-in-law, before he got married, he had this, like, he's like, I want to be my best to walk my daughter down the aisle, you know? So he lost 20 kilos.
Wow.
And his knee pain went away. He had been to like 3 different surgeons before, and they were all like, oh, you don't have any cartilage left, we need to operate. And he lost 20 kilos and his knee pain went away. No more inflammation. He stopped getting sleep apnea. He stopped snoring at night. So he used to wake up cranky for like that. I always ask my wife, I'm like, her memory of her dad is him waking up cranky in the mornings. And then when he lost all the weight, he stopped waking up cranky because he could breathe better at night and actually sleep. So, you know, if you start addressing things, it's like a cascade of improvements. It's not one thing that improves. So if you fix your original ankle injury, all your stability comes back. You know, so it's like we just ignore things, especially men. Like we tend to ignore things until they become a bigger problem. But sometimes, the consequences of that, you got to think like, okay, what's the first order of consequence? Like I have a shoulder injury that I need to eventually operate on. And I'm like, okay, first order of consequence is that sometimes it feels a bit tight. I can deal with that. Second order of consequence is that eventually it might wear down to the point where like I can't lift overhead. That's a problem.
Yep.
Third order of consequence is I go to get groceries and I pick up the bag and my shoulder dislocates. Or I hold my future kid and my shoulder dislocates. Like that's something that I really need to fix. So you got to think like, what are the potential consequences, not just immediate, but in the future of this injury or of this health ailment? Like you might be overweight for now and you might be okay with it. Might make you feel a bit insecure, or you might not fit in your clothes well. But what are the consequences 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 30 years from now? Fact is, you're probably going to still be alive. You know, average life expectancy is like 85 years old. And if you're 30 and you're already in poor health, are you willing to do the next 55 years?
Yeah, that's right.
Like in that state?
Yeah, it'll be like my tooth when it starts to get really painful. And just rip the bastard out.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it'll be the same thing if you're living life like that and you're just like, oh, I'll be relieved when I'm dead, just because obviously of all the pain that you're walking around in, right?
Yeah. So it's it's just choices, man. Everything's trade-offs.
Yeah,
you know. So
I guess, you know, for you guys, and probably maybe step through like the different kinds of tests that are available now. Because I think last time we spoke about obviously the gut microbiome, the stool tests, you know, and that side of things. But like, you know, you mentioned some of the blood tests that can be done, the DNA testing. Like, talk us through all the different styles of.
Oh, we have so many tests, man. Like we've got hormone neurotransmitter. So neurotransmitter is a really interesting one. So when we do a hormone and neurotransmitter panel, we can see things like your 24-hour cortisol. You know, and everyone thinks of cortisol as a negative thing. That cortisol is a stress hormone. It's like, yeah, but you actually need a lot of it.
Yep.
So in the morning, you have this nice cortisol awakening response. So you get up in the morning, all your stress hormones increase, and you have this peak roughly about 2 hours after waking, and then it's supposed to drop down throughout the day.
Yep.
Now, if you live a really stressful life and you need more stress hormone throughout the day because of whatever, your job or whatever you're doing, you're going to tend to hold on to that stress longer, and that's going to cause issues. And so in the long run, you'll blunt your cortisol awakening response. So you'll wake up feeling quite flat. And the only way that you can get going in the morning is by stimulants.
Yep.
Coffee, caffeine, Ritalin, Adderall, whatever people like, nicotine, whatever people take to get them going.
Yep.
And so that's a really interesting one because it tells us about your lifestyle. It's like, oh, this is how you've been operating. And you're on the verge of like chronic fatigue.
And there's no I always say this, there's no biological free lunch. You know, you can't take coffee and expect, and like there are people out there that will say, oh yeah, coffee doesn't affect me. That's probably just because you blunted your cortisol response to that point where your system just goes, yeah, coffee, it's, you know.
Whatever, yeah, it's not stimulating anymore.
Yeah.
But then there's like a neurotransmitter panel in that test where we go, okay, well, what do we need to make serotonin? You know, so, I feel anxious. Okay, well, how do you not feel anxious? We need GABA. To make GABA, we need glutamine. To get glutamine, we need to eat protein. To digest protein, we need to have good digestive enzyme capacity. So like we reverse engineer the problem versus giving you like an anti-anxiety drug or a SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, or whatever, like a dopaminergic drug. A lot of people are like, I don't feel motivated, I have no energy. And one of the ways to fix that, like if you go to a psychiatrist, they'll give you a dopaminergic drug like Ritalin. And it's like, that's great, it works. But you start with 5 milligram and then you need to take 10 and then you need to take 15.
Because your body gets used to
20, and then you increase the dose to this like huge, humongous dose, and you're essentially taking amphetamine, and then you can't create your own dopamine levels anymore because you've just almost destroyed that, and it's going to take probably 3 to 4 years of repair to get that fixed. So instead of doing that, what else can we do? How can we get dopamine into your system, or how can we create dopamine? What supplements do we need? What nutrients are created? Like it's essentially a biochemical pathway. It's like this makes this and this and this and this. And we need these enzymes for conversion, and we need these cofactors. So it's just an equation.
Yeah.
You know, when we look at the test results, we go, oh, okay, this person needs more B6 and they need more tryptophan. And so let's get them eating more protein, but also let's create a formula that has those things in there, and let's get them supplementing as well.
Yeah.
So we try to deal with it from a more root cause perspective versus like giving you just the free lunch or the loan, you know, that you eventually will have to pay back.
Yeah.
With interest.
Yeah.
So it's,
So on that, right, like, and, you know, I've thought about this just because obviously I'm getting older, right? So I'm like, I'm 40 now, and I'm like, when I do go to the doctor, or like when I used to do my medicals for CSA and things like that, I would always get them to check my free test levels, so I know like what my testosterone levels are. So I've got a baseline in terms of where I'm at. And I've always, you know, I've sort of come to, you know, now that I'm not competing anymore, it's like, okay, well, when my test starts getting low, I probably should look at some TRT or something like that.
Yeah, why not?
But I guess, you know, from that perspective, right, like, are there, there's two parts to this question. The first part of the question is, selfishly, as you age, are there certain things that that can be done so that you perhaps don't need testosterone replacement therapy? And then the second part of the question is then for athletes who might be, jiu-jitsu athletes that are on, test or whatever, or tren or whatever they're on, are there things that you can do to then get the endocrine system, functioning back to, normal, I guess, post?
It's hard. Like, different things become more important as you age. And so the biggest things are muscle mass and bone density.
Yep.
So can you keep, because you start to lose muscle mass as you age naturally.
Yep.
So resistance training becomes a lot more important. So if you're a jiu-jitsu athlete in your 40s, if you're not doing resistance training, you're going to run into trouble, right? So you should be lifting 2 times a week, 3 times a week, putting load on your body to stimulate muscle density, stimulate muscle mass growth. And then protein becomes a lot more important, especially as you age. So you almost need to like double your protein intake. So if you're 80 kilos, you need to be eating minimum 160 grams of protein per day, like 2 grams per kilo of body weight.
Yep.
This is like old school bodybuilder science. People call it bro science, but they had it right. Like they actually knew what they were doing. They were like, okay, well, I'm going to eat protein and I'm going to lift. And bodybuilders who didn't take steroids are some of the healthiest people, right? You look at them in their 70s and they're still ripped.
Yeah.
So that's protein and lifting becomes really important. Testosterone obviously declines with age. You can do things like living a healthy lifestyle, not smoking, not drinking, getting lots of sunshine, having enough vitamin D, enough zinc. Like you can do a lot of things to help, keep your testosterone at a decent level, but obviously it's going to decline. It comes back to like, what do you want to achieve? So I've had patients in the past, like guys who come to us feeling horrible, anxious, depressed, low energy, chronic fatigue, and they've been taking testosterone for 5 years and they still feel shit. Because it's not testosterone that's the problem. Like, have we fixed everything else? Do you sleep okay? Do you have sleep apnea? Do you have metabolic issues? What's your gut health like? Are you lifting? Are you eating enough protein? Okay, let's fix all that. And then let's look at TRT.
Yeah.
But let's not just do TRT because that's just a Band-Aid solution.
Yeah.
Again, it's a free lunch.
Yeah.
And it comes with consequences. Like it's not, can you get if you come off of TRT, can you get your normal hormone levels back to normal? I don't know. Maybe not. Like, is there a perfect post-cycle therapy? No. So I don't know. It comes with consequences. Everything comes with consequences.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, you can take it. If you're young and you're on TRT, like when it's time to have children and you do a sperm count test, you might not have enough sperm. Like your quality of sperm might not be very good because of the choices you made taking testosterone when you were younger. So you got to consider these things. Yeah. Like it's a problem for fertility. Everything comes with pros and cons. Yeah. So it's not as easy as like, I'm just going to take it and it's going to fix everything. No, unfortunately, you're going to have to do the work. Yeah. It's like, here's a good analogy. If you're a jiu-jitsu athlete and all you know is how to do really good heel hooks and like you win the first couple of years, eventually people are going to realize that all you do is heel hooks. And then they're going to start countering that. And then you're going to actually have to develop your overall game. You're still going to have to do the work. There's no magic bullet to success. So, that's, you got to do the work. You got to treat everything holistically. So as you age, protein, resistance training, mobility, sleep, like all of your needs, all of your like requirements become higher. It's like when you're a child. It's funny, like when you're a child, you have higher nutritional needs. And then between the age of like 25 to like 38, 40, you're okay. And then like after 40, you become a child again. Like you become more high maintenance because you need more nutritional needs and requirements. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah. I think, often people overlook, the pillars of health, right? The pillars of health are a good sleep, good food, right? And exercise. Like you can't really,
get around that.
Yeah. You can't get around that. If you're missing one of those 3 pillars, it's always never going to get you the optimal result.
Yeah. Exercise like every day. I'm subscribed to a newsletter called Science Daily, and they send me new articles of like research articles every day. And every single day there's something to do with exercise and like cancer and exercise. And like, it's so powerful. I remember when I was younger, my mom had cancer. We went to an oncologist at St. George Hospital and she said, there's no drug I can give you that will replicate the benefits of exercise. Yeah, it doesn't exist. Like we cannot formulate it. And so there's nothing you can do that's more powerful than exercise. Yeah. Huge.
So then, just thinking about like, we've just had coffee as an example, right? So for you personally, do you like to go through periods where you cycle on and off those things? So you might have coffee, I don't know, one day on, one day off,
Not really. No, coffee. I drink coffee most days.
Yeah.
Again, like you can't. No one's perfect, right? Like I have my shortcomings with my health. Coffee is probably one of them. I like espresso, and I probably drink like 4 a day. You know, I probably don't drink enough water because I end up talking so much to clients and I forget.
Yeah.
But like my nutrition's really good.
Yeah.
I eat real foods. I eat frequently. I have protein with every meal. Like I make sure I prioritize that. I lift 3 times a week. I sleep 8 hours a night. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke. So there's like a lot that I do that's really good. And then there's some things where I'm like, okay, well, every now and again, you know, I'll have a bit of a whatever. Like last night we had a dinner with some of the guys from jiu-jitsu and Rob was there, like my jiu-jitsu instructor. And we had this ice cream cake that they brought. And like everyone had a piece, but it was a Sunday night. And like his rule is, he goes, I don't have sugar inside of the house. I only eat sugar if I'm out. So if I'm out at a dinner or if I'm out at an event, I'll have dessert. But at home, I don't have it.
Yeah.
So it's a good rule because like if you think about it, well, how often would you eat dessert then? Maybe once a month.
Yeah, when you're out with friends.
When you're out with friends. So there's like certain rules and certain things that you can do that you know, help. But yeah, like my average day is, you know, breakfast, coffee, water, work, lift, try to get 5,000 to 8,000 steps a day if I can, do a little bit of jiu-jitsu and like I don't drink, I don't smoke and yeah.
And what are you eating for breakfast?
This morning I had a piece of gluten-free toast with 3 eggs and a carrot cake cookie, gluten-free, that we made over the weekend.
Yep.
If I'm really time poor, I'll have like a smoothie.
Yep.
So like coconut water, protein, frozen berries, zip it, drink it. But that's basically, that's breakfast most days. Smoothie or like some eggs.
Yeah, well, it's funny, we, in my household, so I've got all my kids eating eggs in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's basically like almost like a cut and gone a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it adds up pretty quick.
It's massive, yeah.
To the point where I was like saying to Ange, look, you know,
we should get chickens.
Yeah, we should get chickens. It's like, we're in an apartment though, where are we going to put them?
Yeah.
And I don't want to have the poor bastards caged up.
Yeah.
I just feel like, you know.
Well, eggs are
battery
superfood,
hens.
man. Eggs are like literally, like egg yolks have so much choline in there, which is so important for brain development. Like it's a superfood, you know? And for so long, again, it's been demonized. We thought like eggs cause high cholesterol. It's like, well, now we know that science is wrong, and yet we still say it.
Well, even on the high cholesterol thing, right? Like, so the last couple of times I got my blood work done, yeah, the doctor said to me, oh, your cholesterol's high. So I had 2 different experiences with 2 different doctors. One doctor was like, you, how much meat are you eating? You need to cut back meat. That was the first thing she said to me. And I was like, okay, I'm out of here. Right. And then the other doctor just said to me, oh, look, it's a little bit high, but like you can't look at it in isolation. And I was like, oh, this is actually refreshing. Yeah, it's refreshing to have a doctor that views things in that way. And she goes, oh, your cholesterol's high, but like, you know, you can't view that in isolation. She asked me a few other questions and then it was just like, no, yeah, it's fine. Like, you know, I wouldn't worry too much about it. You know, we'll track it over time. And if it gets worse, then we can do something about it.
Yeah.
While I'm thinking about it, like, you know, another question for you, statins and like heart health, right?
Yeah.
My brother's, I think on statins at the moment, he had like a scan done and they said like some of his arteries were like partially blocked or whatever. Are there things that you guys look at or protocols that you guys look at for that sort of stuff? Or
Yeah, a lot of metabolic health stuff. So like with him, we'd look at, glucose tolerance testing. We'd look at his weight. Look at does he have sleep apnea? Are there other things that can be driving inflammation and atherosclerosis versus just cholesterol, right? Because cholesterol, a lot of the time, the doctor's right. If you look at it in isolation, it doesn't make much sense. Because I've had high cholesterol levels in the past, but otherwise I'm perfectly healthy. So like, do I need statins? You know, what are the pros and cons? So there's a lot you can do before you start statin therapy. In fact, like depending on, I mean, is your brother exercising?
I believe so. It's hard to say nowadays. He's not fat. Like he's skinny. He's not skinny, but like he's like, you know, he's okay. Yeah. Medium sized build, not overly fat. No.
Does he smoke? Does he drink?
Don't believe so.
Any other risk factors? Family history of heart disease?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So you got to look at it like holistic, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, you know.
But yeah, I think, you know, we naturally in our family, we do have high cholesterol levels.
Yeah.
I think that's a family.
Yeah. There's a genetic component to it as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But whether that cholesterol is contributing to the problem, we can't really say.
Dictate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that was the thing that when I sort of said to him, oh, you know, you should look into a whole bunch of different things. And he was like, oh, you know, but he had a scan done and like that's what said the arteries were like partially blocked or whatever. So it was like, get on the statins kind of a thing.
Yeah. Look, and the thing is like people think because we're functional health nutritionists or practitioners or whatever that we don't want drug therapy ever. There are times when we recommend pharmaceutical drugs to patients. We'll say, hey, you need an antibiotic for this infection, like a rifaximin or a really specific one, or you need thyroid medication. Like it'll make you feel a heck of a lot better.
Yeah.
There are drugs in some cases that are really appropriate. We've had patients, we had one young guy, business owner, like came to us with kind of some mental health stuff and a bunch of thyroid issues, dealt with most of it, and he still takes a really low dose of an antidepressant daily. So what? It's great. Fine. It works for him and it's necessary and his health is otherwise great. So there are times when it is helpful. It's just let's not build up from one medication to 2 and from 2 to 4 and 4 to 8. And then we have 8, we've had patients that have like 12 prescription medications all at once.
Wow.
Like 3 different painkillers, blood pressure medication, antidepressant, anti-anxiety, sleeping pill. Like, fuck, like where do we even start?
Yeah.
Like, how do we know how all of these work in combination together?
Right.
We don't. No one knows.
It's basically uppers to wake up and downers to get to sleep.
Pretty much. So
and then you're doing the whole cycle every day.
That's what you want to avoid. But if you're taking a medication every now and again because you find it helpful and it's necessary, then fine. Like, not a problem. You just, it's not all bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just shouldn't be the first line of therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair. All right. Let's switch gears a bit because I want to talk about the new business.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So what's the new business about, and what do you guys do?
The new business, it's like a little undercover thing. We haven't really talked about it, but we've got. So essentially, it's a advertising and sales agency, which there are many of out there. But we kind of differentiate ourselves on giving people, like business owners, correct expectations. So I've had quite a lot of people reach out to me and be like, "Oh, I want to run ads. I don't know how to run ads and." How did you grow humanly, basically? And the way I grew humanly is by learning how to write enticing copy, put an offer together, find a problem, communicate to a specific marketplace, run ads, have a nice follow-up process in terms of sales, and that's how it grew. And it's a very predictable system. It doesn't rely on referrals. It doesn't rely on anyone, really. It relies on, I can dictate month to month how many clients we're going to sign up based on how much advertising I do and what the numbers look like. So it's very predictable, which is good, because otherwise with most service-based businesses, if you're relying purely on referrals, like one month you might have a great month and the next month it might be super quiet.
Yeah.
So we had some people reach out, and a friend of mine, they are doing stem cell therapy in the US, and he was like, look, we have a lot of referrals, but we also want to build kind of like a sales funnel and a marketing channel, and how do we do that?
Yeah.
And I've realized that many business owners don't really know tech, and they don't really know how to put together the structure and send data from one app to another, and integrations and automations and AI. And like I've had to learn that over the years to service our business. So we just built it for them. Well, look, we'll build it for you. We'll build the ads, we'll build the CRM, we'll build the data integrations to send data from here to there and back to Meta and whatever. And we'll build the targeting, and we'll get you specific clients, and we'll build a sales script, and we'll build a process. So like when a lead comes in, what do you do?
Yep.
Who reaches out? What do they say? What are the questions? What's a qualified lead? What's a non-qualified lead? So we built all of this for them, and it's been working great.
Yep.
And then we had a mortgage broker reach out. Same thing. They were like, hey, like we want leads. And I was like, okay, what type of leads? Like, what is your average loan size? What do you want? Like, do you want...
Focusing on car loans, you're focusing on houses.
Yeah, do you want
units?
Young couples, home loans, refinance? Like, what do you want, and how can we make your ad enticing to people? Because there are many brokers out there. So what's different about you? And so we help build that. That's been working great. And then we have another company called Smart Snug, which sell baby monitors. And like they were like, well, we have this really unique product. We don't know how to sell it. I was like, okay, cool. Let's build some ads.
Yeah.
Like, let's build your brand. Let's build an email list. Let's nurture them. So it's been really cool because I like it, because it's like a game for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, there's this lever we can pull. And I've realized like many businesses don't know that they can do this. Like the power of, everyone thinks like social media and they think they need to be posting every day, but you don't. You can have content that you build once that if you create the right ads and put some money behind it, people can see it. You can retarget people who engage with your podcast or with your page, and that you can keep nurturing them and educating them until they're ready to take action with you. You don't have to be posting every day.
Yeah.
Because that's like the most business owners don't want to do that, especially the business owners we attract, because they're usually like, say a mortgage broker, average age is like 50. They've been in brokering for like 20 years. The last thing they want to do is be posting on Instagram. So we go, okay, well, let's just create content once and then let's put money behind it.
Yeah.
You know, because they don't want to do it. They're like, I don't want to be posting on Instagram. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to.
Yeah.
We just have to create it once. But if you're not on socials and if you're not advertising, like you're really limiting your growth. You don't have, like, you can create another acquisition channel that you otherwise didn't have that can potentially bring you like an additional 500,000 in revenue this year.
Yeah.
From $50,000 of ad spend. Why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Like, I think a lot of people, when you build an account, you know, on Instagram, it's kind of like, well, what's the purpose of why you're building it?
It's a business card. It's to build trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then, you know, by garnering, so let's say if you go with the vanity metrics of followers or reach, so you chase, you know, following and reach, but then what the other component of it that people really need to focus on is like, what is the actual conversion, right? Like, how much are these people actually contributing to your bottom line, or like whether it's sales revenue, whatever you're chasing, right? And there's a whole acquisition channel there that I think a lot of people overlook, right? And if you get that right, you can sort of streamline your customer acquisition channel. And so rather than doing like this massive, you know, shotgun approach to marketing, like it's part of the reason why, you know, when car sales came around, it sort of killed newspaper advertising for cars. Like in the past, you know, Trading Post, how big was the Trading Post?
Yeah.
You know, I remember in high school, guys used to, you know, bring the Trading Post in and look at cool shit to buy.
Yeah.
And then, you know, over time, the Trading Post then became like basically non-existent because you had specialist websites for each of these things. You know, that's why you got car sales. That's why you got realestate.com.au, you know, or Domain, like all of these specialized websites. And then over time, you know, from a cost perspective, like they're publicly listed companies now, right? So they have an obligation to their shareholders to drive profit.
Yeah.
And there's only so many levers you can pull to generate profit. Yeah. Right. You either need to keep innovating and creating new products that you can then sell to your partners. You know, because I guess if you think about a large proportion of car sales business would be B2B. So, you know, other car dealerships or car companies advertising on their platform. Yeah. And then the smaller subsection will be the used car market and private sales and all that sort of stuff. So when it comes to, you know, that opportunity to drive revenue and acquisition, like that's one channel, right? But if you can't just have all your eggs in that basket. No. Whereas if you then, you know, diversify and then you've got another acquisition channel, you know, in this case, socials as an example, you might actually allow yourself to then reach a larger audience. You know, we did a similar thing, you know, with Alta, where I'm working, and we sort of rejigged, you know, how we're trying to market, you know, the program 20 weeks training, have your first cage fight. Like how does that message get out to people, and how do people see that? How do they engage with that? So I can definitely see why there's a niche there for you to operate that business.
Yeah. And it's great for some businesses. Like mortgage brokers are perfect for it because it's free for the client, right? So as a customer, me engaging with a mortgage broker doesn't cost me anything. So they get paid by the banks, right, on commission. And it's a relatively high ticket margin. And so they can liquidate the cost of the ads quite quickly. You know, so it's like, okay, well, a lot of mortgage brokers will say, how do you get your clients? They go, well, referrals. Like, okay, what happens do you want to grow? Like, are you happy with referrals, or do you want to acquire more clients that otherwise wouldn't see you? You know, why can't you service someone in Perth? Why not? Do it over Zoom. Yep. You have access to the same banks, same country. So can we open up the market share? Like, can we get you clients from elsewhere? And then they go, yes, we can, but like a lot of the leads aren't good. Like, okay, well, what do you want them to be? Like, what questions do you want to ask them before they get on a call with you? And so then we build custom surveys. And if the person answers the wrong question, we disqualify them. Yeah, okay. And then their cost per lead goes up, but they get better quality leads. Yep. And then we ask them, like, how much are you willing to pay to acquire a lead? What would make sense in terms of profit? And like, if you're a broker and your average loan size usually is about 700,000 and you get 3% upfront from the banks, how much is that? What's 3% of 700 grand?
21.
Yeah. So how much are you willing to pay to get that lead, to get that business? You know, and then your trail commission and all those things. So it's just a math thing. Like it's a very logical thing. And like, if you just, as a business, I think like it's important to have multiple acquisitions. Like, yes, we have referrals and we have people who come through podcasting and we have people who like are referred by clients, but I don't rely on that. Yeah. Because I can't. Yeah. You know, so I have to have advertising running as well. And in the modern age, like everything's on your phone.
Yeah.
You know, that's where the eyeballs are. That's where you're going to get the most impressions, the most clicks, the most attention, the most people. Like everybody is on social media, on their phone.
Yeah.
So,
and also that allows you to then service clients anywhere as well, right? You've got a business where, you know, if Marko wants to take off, you know, a year and be overseas, you know, you could technically do that.
Yeah. Technically, it'd be a lot more difficult with time zones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you got to think like, where are my clients? What time zone are they in? And is the time zone I'm going to be, is that going to match?
Yeah.
Where they are.
So for you, I guess in terms of, you mentioned the stem cell clinic over in the US, right? Like, so that's operating in a different time zone.
Yep. But we don't need to be taking their sales calls.
Okay.
They have their own team.
Yep.
So what we do is
so you focus on lead gen
and building the sales process.
Yep.
So, you know, we meet once a week with the sales team and go through the numbers, like how many leads came through, how many were contacted, what was the conversion, where did you fall apart? Like, where was the problem? We diagnose the problem and then fix that. So it's like anyone can generate a lead. There are many lead gen agencies out there. It's not hard to do. Like you can learn how to generate leads, but then how do you convert those?
Yep.
That's the hard part. It's like we can give you a list of leads, but how are you going to build trust with that person so that they convert into a customer?
Yeah.
So, you know, for us, like for Humanly, for someone to convert to a customer, usually it's like a 30-day process.
Yeah, wow.
You know, they opt into something, they look at our content, they read our newsletter, they talk to someone from the team, they talk to someone from the team again, they talk to me, and eventually they convert. It's not like an overnight, it's very rarely an overnight thing.
Yeah.
You know, so everything right now, I think in the marketplace, like in terms of business, is about trust. It's about building trust, you know, because there's just so much out there and people want to trust you before they purchase from you.
Yeah.
So how are you going to do that? How
you got to cut through all the noise, right?
Yeah. How are you going to nurture them? You know, you can't just ask people for business. You know, why should they work with you? So really like selling through education, I think is the best way.
Yep.
You know, so for brokers, it's like, well, you know, what problem do you want to fix? And many of them go, well, we want young couples with high incomes. Okay. What problems do they run into?
They'd be the unicorns, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but like
because you have to navigate the issues with like serviceability, kids, all that sort of stuff.
Serviceability, kids, if they have enough of deposit, like what problems do they potentially run into when trying to apply for a loan, and how can you help them? And so that's the marketing. The message is like, hey, if you're running into X, Y, and Z problem, we can help. Give them an incentive to want to like opt in and work with you and book a call.
Yeah.
So that's what we've been doing, which has been really fun. I enjoy it because I get to see like a lot of businesses and it keeps me creative. It's different. Whereas with Humanly, it's like over and over where it's repetition, which is great. But this gives some fresh perspective to my life anyway.
I think it's also it gives you more experience as well in the sense of like you're problem solving, but just for different problems, right?
Yeah.
And even though like the broad sort of structure might sort of stay the same in terms of like, you know, what is the channel for acquisition?
Yeah.
Most sales processes ideally are fairly similar. And you know, once you have those sort of things, it's now then problem solving in terms of what is the niche, and then how do you market to that niche? And that's the part that would be, you know, exciting and a little bit creative for you.
Yeah, and how can you liquefy the cost of the marketing? So like, you know, how quickly do you collect payment, and does that liquidate the cost of the ads that you just paid for, so you can do it next month? And
so you can run
like,
it again.
you can run it again. So like all of that stuff is really important because there are many agencies out there that are like, just, you know, pay us 15 grand and we'll build a thing for you and it'll bring you millions of revenue, and it never does because it's not that simple. Like you have to look at a business holistically. It's like health. It's like I have to look at the entire business. Sometimes there's been times when we said no to clients because I'm like, you just don't have like the people required to service the leads that come through. So you're not going to convert any of them.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen is we'll generate 50 mortgage leads for you, but you don't have a broker that can call them. You know?
Yeah. So there's no point.
So there's no point.
Well, that's a different problem, right? Like I always think there's, and this is just coming from, you know, the sales background, right? Is like when it comes to lead gen, right? There's two reasons why you don't get the sales that you want. It's either you didn't generate enough leads or your conversion rate's low. Right. And so you need to work on addressing the conversion rate issue before you can address the lead gen issue, because you can generate 1,000 leads, but if your conversion rate's 0.01%, well, you spend all that money for not a lot of gain.
Yeah.
So by ideally, you know, you focus on the conversion ratio, make sure your sales process is right, you increase your conversion, then all you need to do is just fill more into the top of the funnel.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And the interesting thing with sales is like, even though everyone has a very similar sales process, it's very rarely tracked. because sales teams tend to be built of like a few cowboys. Like salespeople are a bit like cowboys. They just do things their own way.
Yep.
And so you go, okay, well, what's the standard? How can we standardize this so that we can track it?
Yeah.
And so like in the script, for example, like why is there 4 people talking about different, like scripting it differently? Why can't we just create a system or a script that you have to go through on each of your calls?
Is that it? So when you do that, wouldn't you be able to just outsource that to AI? Some of it, like
the call itself,
not
or
the call,
script?
not the call, but the script.
You can, but like there's nuance because like you're talking to a human on the other end. So tonality, cadence of what you're saying, like what kind of offer is it? Because like a mortgage offer versus like a health offer is a very different conversation. The health offer is a lot slower. You need to be listening a heck of a lot more, and it's less logical, more emotional.
Yeah,
because people are talking about their health. Whereas like a mortgage offer is quite logical.
Yeah,
you can go through your script a lot faster without anyone feeling weird about it. Like, hey man, like you opted in, you know, what's the issue?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't get a loan. Okay, well, what are you looking to purchase? This. Okay, do you have a property at the moment? No. What's your combined income? Like you can ask all these questions really quickly and there's no emotionality attached to it. Whereas like the health offer is a lot more emotional. So the scripting is different. It's not just like I can generate the words, but how you say them is just as important.
Yeah.
You know? So tonality and like training the team on tonality and understanding like sales is really important, you know?
It's a skill.
It's a skill because if they don't trust you on that call, they're not going to purchase.
Yeah.
Even if the treatment's $1, you know, they won't give you, they just don't trust you enough.
Yeah.
To make that exchange. So you have to build a process that's standardized across the team. And that means like, you know, people can tweak it. Like salespeople can add their flair to it, but there has to be a process. You can't just be cowboy. I'm just going to call and say whatever I want, because how do we as a company now track that?
Yeah.
You know, so like, for example, most sales teams, they'll have like a team of 10 and there's 2 guys bringing in majority of the revenue. You go, well, how come that's working and no one else? Like, what's the difference? And if you're not recording calls and having scripts and asking questions and reviewing calls, how do you know?
Yeah.
You know, so how do you replicate the results? You can't, because everyone's doing different things.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's one. I think that's one thing where, you know, at least in the car sales industry, it's quite advanced because obviously, you know, you scrutinize, right? Your commission check is wholly and solely related to how your ability to sell.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, you know, I can definitely say there's definitely some cowboys out there that have done really well over the years. But from a business perspective, yeah, like when you're a sales manager or more senior manager, you want to look at those metrics and be able to, you know, work with your guys to make them better.
Yeah.
And so then there's key things that you look for. You know, you're looking for test drive rates and appointment ratios and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
To then deliver that next level, right?
Yeah.
So then, do you guys then consult in terms of like, so you mentioned the sales process side of things. Do you leave the conversion side of things up to their own teams to do, or do you guys consult on that as well?
It depends. Sometimes we get paid on conversion. So it depends on the deal. Like it depends what they want.
Wow.
Essentially what we are, it's like instead of you having to hire an internal sales manager and marketing director, we'll come in and do it for you.
Yep.
So we'll build the lead gen funnel and then we'll consult your team and train them to convert those leads.
Yep.
Ongoing. So like for the amount of time that you work with us, we'll continue training and consulting your team.
Yep.
And then sometimes like we'll get a commission of that. You know, we'll get paid a 5% or a 4% or a 10% commission of whatever we've brought in from our systems.
Yep.
So it's up to us. It's in our best interest that things happen and conversions happen.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good offer. Like if you're, you know, a small business who doesn't have the funds to hire a sales manager for $100,000 a year and a marketing director for another, like if you don't have those funds, well then you can just pay an outside agency to come in and do it.
Yep.
And incentivize them with commission. And that's how we kind of work.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, put skin in the game, right?
It puts skin in the game and it makes it fun.
Yeah.
Because, you know, most agencies will just build it for you and charge you a retainer and go, you know, okay, here you go, we've built it, good luck. And then what happens is like sales and marketing don't like each other because the sales guys are going, well, the leads are shit, and the marketing guys are going, no, well, we provided 1,000 of them, why can't you close them? And then it's like, no one's winning, everyone's losing.
Yeah.
So like it's just doing it in a more holistic way where like it works for everyone. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been interesting seeing the back end of like how different businesses operate and how different business owners operate.
Do you think are there any sort of key identifiers of success for, you know, I guess when you think of like the ones that you've been more successful with versus the ones that probably aren't as successful. And that could come down to, you know, whether the vision of the leader, could come down to management styles. It could come down to silos in communication. Like, I guess, are there any things that you commonly...
willingness for the business owner to actually do the work.
Really?
So like our most successful account, their partners, co-founders, 2 of them, and one of the co-founders takes all the sales calls that we generate.
Yep.
He's willing to do that.
Yep.
And he closes like 40% of them into new business.
Yep.
The business owners who want to be hands off and delegate work, they're usually the ones that don't do very well.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, like businesses is interesting because I've never been in a corporate environment before, not to this extent. And now I'm seeing like corporations and businesses in the back end, and I'm like, man, there's like 10 people on this Zoom meeting and there's only 2 people who are actually doing the work. Honestly.
Yep.
So it's like, we'll have a web developer there who's like, we're trying to build out like a custom form or a custom calculator or a custom whatever. And out of the 10, and everyone's wanting different things in this meeting, and he's the only one that's actually going to implement the work. And so it's just a waste of resources. Why is there 10 people here? Like, why are we all everyone's delegating stuff to everyone else?
Yeah.
You know, and like I have a rule at Humanly with everyone. It's like, don't create work for anyone else. If you can do it, do it. So like even me, if something comes across my desk or an email from a client that's technically someone else's job, I'll deal with it.
Yeah.
I'll do it. I'm not going to pass it on, because once we start passing on work to each other that we can do ourselves, we're not really helping.
Yeah.
So
and then the person that gets shafted at the end of it is the customer, right? Because then there's delays in communication.
There's blah, 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 confusion, and everyone's just passing on work.
Yeah.
So we found like the accounts that do the best are with the business owners who actually want to do the work, who are like, it's my business. I want to generate the sales. I want to learn how to do this before we put someone else on.
Yep.
And they're the ones that kill it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the difference between leadership and management. You know, the leader's leading from the front.
Yep.
And in any sort of change situation or change management, you know, you want to have a leader who's actually invested in making sure that they understand, you know, how these things are going to go. Because how are you supposed to teach somebody else to do it if you haven't been through it yourself?
Exactly, yeah. And they know if it's working. And like, if they're putting their money on the line, right, they want to know if it's working. It's funny, man, like so many business owners these days, I've realized like many of them have this idea that they're going to build this business that other people are going to operate for them, and they're going to just sit back and make money. And that's not how it works at all. Yeah. Like it's a phenomenal amount of work that you have to do in order for this business to get to that point. And if you're not willing to do it, no one else is going to do it for you. Yeah. You can hire them, you can pay them, you can give them commissions. At the end of the day, they're human.
Yeah, they're not going to operate with the same sort of intensity as when you got skin
no
in the
way.
game.
There's no way that they're going to operate with the same intensity. And like, that's just an expectation you should have as a business owner. So yeah, the most successful accounts we have are guys who are like, can we generate leads? And I want to take the calls. You're like, yep. And they close like 40-50% of them.
Yep. Question for you, Marko, because I reckon, you know, when I speak to you, you're a very action oriented guy.
Yeah.
Right. Because the reason I don't say that in a negative way. I think, you know, quite often people get stuck in this, you know, I'll think about doing this, or maybe I'll do it in the future, or the time is not now, or you know, all sorts of all those kinds of different things, right? But you know, I've sort of, you know, always been well, when I reflect on my own career, the times when I was doing the best, so to speak, is when I was very action oriented. You know, like decisions, you just make a decision and you move on with life, and then you just pivot, you know, based on what potential outcome
or feedback
that might be, or feedback that might be, right? Because, and you know, like I can use the example of like, say, buying investments, right? You can sit on the fence and you can go, okay, I might buy this investment, I might not, and the opportunity may pass you by. Yeah. And then, you know, you don't really know how that potential investment might have gone, because if you didn't buy it, you're not checking on it 10 years later. Yeah. Right. But if you did buy it and then you go, okay, it's been 10 years now, what's my return been? Like, how is that investment going? Right. It doesn't always work, because trust me, I've lost money on things too. Right. But I think, you know, being action oriented is probably a key determinant in success. Right. So for you, when it comes to executing on your ideas, right. And even like, just say like with this new business, right? Like, what was the sort of time frame for you to just go from thinking, oh, I think there's a business here.
1 month.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, like literally I was like, I wonder if I feel like I can do this. Because like I would see, because we've hired agencies for Humanly before, and I'm like, they didn't do a great job. And like, I could have done this better. And I have. And then I took what they did and improved on it. I'm like, okay, so we could probably do this. And I remember having that conversation with Jess, with my wife. I was like, hey, I think I should do this thing. She's like, yeah, just give it a shot. And then I organized a meeting. Like I called a friend of mine who I knew had a business who wanted to run ads. And I was like, hey, let me build this for you. And they've been a client ever since.
Yeah.
December 2022, that was. It was like a while back. So it's
Wow.
not a brand new business.
Yep.
But we still don't have a logo. We still don't have a website. We still don't have, we have a CRM to manage we've got 5 clients. We have a CRM to manage our 5 clients. And we have a payment processor and a business name and number and address.
Yep.
Like we have the things that matter.
Yep.
And eventually we will build all those other extras. But at the moment, we don't really need them. Like the way that we generate businesses, referrals and word of mouth and talking to people. And, you know, that's what we need. So I think a lot of people just get lost in like doing things that don't really matter. You know, they want it to be perfect before it's like out there in the marketplace. It's like, no, the market will tell you what you need.
Yeah. It'll help you to refine.
It'll help you to refine it. So once you start selling your service and you start getting feedback, you will improve it constantly and change. It will constantly change. Like humanly is always changing. It's never a finished product. The testing that we run, the processes, the appointments, like we learn things. We're like, oh, you know what? It's probably a good idea to add an appointment here because we've learned that patients struggle here at this time frame. So add one there.
Yeah.
You know, so we're constantly like improving stuff as you're getting feedback from your market. So with us, with the agency, it's been very quick. It's like, okay, we can do this. And then we just started doing it and it worked. And so then we just replicate and refine and replicate and refine. But yeah, people get stuck. But not everyone can do that, you know? And like I've learned, like not everybody has that tolerance to risk and not everyone has that confidence. Sometimes it's like false confidence. Jess will say to me, she's like, you sometimes say things to me with such confidence that I believe them, but I know you're wrong. So like, I'll be like, why did you leave the towel there? She's like, I didn't, you did. I'm like, no, you did. She's like, no, you left it. But like you say it with such confidence and conviction that like, and it's some, I don't know, like some people are like that. Some people are not. Yeah.
Where do you think that stems from?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think growing up very like in Macedonia when I grew up, it was very you grow up in a tribe. So you're around other kids playing on the street, you're around other adults, you're socialized a lot very early in life. And so you get good to talking with people. I think that's where it comes from. Just like early life, being socialized with lots and lots of people. Yeah. Like I remember like being a kid and going to the grocery store and like famoosing your way to get like free ice cream from someone. You know, like you'd talk to them and they'd be like, oh, show me how you do that thing. And then like you do something and then like they'd buy you ice cream. Like, yes, feedback. You know, so it's like, and like things like that when you do as a kid, you know.
I'll tell you a funny story about this. So often, you know, when I would travel for business and things like that, and it's like, you know, you got an itinerary, but always, you know, generally on the flight home, you might get to the airport a little bit early. Yeah. Right. So I will always try and get myself on an earlier flight because obviously I want to get home to my family. Yeah. Right. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I remember one time I did this with a friend and he was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm going to get us on an earlier flight. And he goes, what do you mean? I was like, well, I'll just go up and ask this lady and I'll smile at her and I'll make a few jokes and, you know, flirt a little, you know, she'll be an older bird. And she'll probably give some earlier tickets. And he goes, what do you mean? And he was like, this is the first he was ever exposed to it. Yeah. And then, and so I go over to the lady and I talk to her nicely and then she's like, yeah, I can get you on an earlier flight and blah, blah, blah. And so, we got on like 1 hour earlier, which is great, right? We'll get back to family earlier. And he was like almost incredulous that I'd done this. Yeah. Right. And he's like, man, I wish I'd known about this for years. Like you could do this. And I was like, look, it doesn't always work, but you know, you always try. Yeah. And then I think the next time it was like I went and tried with this one lady and she said no. And he's like, oh, all right, well, that didn't work. And I go, no, we'll go ask this other lady. I went over to this other lady, tried a different one and got it. Yeah. And he's like, what? You just do that? And I'm going, yeah, like, you know, it wasn't a straight no. It was just like, oh, check this person and, you know, there might be a cost. And then I was like, oh, really? There's going to be a cost? And then, you know, you just sort of talk to them nicely. And then, you know, oftentimes I think people overlook the fact that, you know, generally people want to help. Yeah. Right? Yeah. If you're nice to people, you can get a heck of a lot more. Like if you're just be nice. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I had a manager once. He used to always tell me, you know, you don't get bees with vinegar.
Yeah.
All right. And it's just it sounds almost stupid to say, right? Of course you don't get bees with vinegar.
Yeah.
But you think about like how that can apply in your life, right? Like if you're sour about things, well, you ain't going to get no bees.
Yeah.
No bees, no fruit, no pollen, right?
It's so important to like what you say and how you say it can change so much.
Yeah.
Like without getting too much into it, think about like Jesus.
Yeah.
Just what he said and how he said it and the message. It's 2,000 years later and he's still the most influential person of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like it's so important. Like just talking is such an important skill. You know, it's huge. So your words and like what you say and the message you put out there can have a really, really big impact. And like if you don't ask, the answer's always no. So if you're like, you know, if you don't ask, well then how do then, if you don't request for help, if you're not like, hey, can you please do this for me? Or can you please get me on? And just tell them why as well. Like, hey, I'd really love to be able to get on an earlier flight. I really want to see my kid.
Yeah.
Most people are like, yeah, of course. You know, they'll do their best to get you on the flight.
Yeah.
So yeah, like those skills, interesting. Like I wonder if everyone has them and some people just don't develop them, or whether like some people are truly born with like more extroversion and less, I don't know. Like, I don't know.
I think there's definitely an impact of personalities. But I would say like I had like I was always, okay, I can give you this story. So when I was a kid, my parents had their own businesses, right?
Yeah.
So then I was always very self-conscious. So like my parents would ask me to like say, answer the phone. Right? And I'd be very self-conscious about it. I wouldn't, and like even when I started doing more sales and things like that, I didn't want other people listening to my phone calls. I used to use my mobile phone all the time, and still out of habit, I do. But I got to this point where, you know, because you find success with it, and when it comes time to then, you know, trying to help other people develop their skills, then I'd be calling people on the loudspeaker and so they could see how I operated.
Yeah.
And so then they could actually pick up some of those things as well. So that purely comes, I think, from a competence aspect, right? Like, you know, it's confidence through competence. When you have, when you developed a competency with something, you're more open about, you know, then sharing that with other people.
Yeah.
Right. But I think there's definitely people that, you know, have no desire to learn any soft skills whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I think that's a difficult thing because, you know, when you think about, you know, the most important skill you could have when it comes to marketing yourself, it's your sales skill.
Yeah.
You know, when you go for a job interview, when you go for anything, you're pitching for business, or you're trying to, you know, even just like sell something on Marketplace. Like it's like, you know, having that ability to just deal with people and deal with them in a nice way.
Yeah.
You know, I always used to talk about like the two forms of sales. It's like, when it comes to negotiation, we can either work collaboratively or combatively, right? And, you know, to sort of put this in perspective, you know, when you are dealing with car sales, well, yeah, a lot of the times it becomes very confrontational, especially if you got a client who comes in and they know they have a reason for coming in at like closing time because they're thinking that, you know, I'm going to have a battle with this guy. He's going to want to go home and he's probably going to acquiesce to my demands kind of a thing. And like being able to reframe those situations and take the tension out of things is a skill.
100%.
Right. Yeah. But like, I feel like there's some people that are more naturally in tune with that. And I think that comes with, you know, I think for me, I think the biggest skill in selling is just having that ability to be transparent about things. You know, for me, I never want to be the guy that says, oh yeah, I gotcha. You know, I actually want to get a win-win, you know, because at the end of the day, it is supposed to be a win-win. When you're selling a car, I've got a product that I'm trying to sell. You've got a product that you want to buy. The middle ground is that we actually both get what we want. Yeah. So, you know,
it's mutual problem solving.
It's mutual problem solving.
Yeah.
So you got to take the confrontational element out of it. Like there's been times where I've sort of said to a customer, you know, okay, well, this is what we can do. And the biggest thing that a lot of people, you know, do is then they just keep talking. And it's like, you know, let's just let the tension just sit there for a moment.
Pause. Yeah. Pause. Yeah. Yeah.
And then they think about it. And then if it's like a prolonged tension, I'd actually call a spade and I'd go, guys, I'm feeling very tense here. Yeah. Does anyone want a coffee? Let me go make a coffee. Have a think about it. Yeah. Just cut the tension. Yep. You know, call it what it is. Yeah. Right. Because like we all know it's going to get uncomfortable. Yeah. Right. And like we used to call like, you know, some customers like Jekyll and Hyde, like they'd be really, really nice up until the point of negotiation. They suddenly just change. Their personality would change. Yeah. Right. And so as a salesperson, like, you know, a lot of times people won't call out that behavior. Yeah. Right. They'll just let it be really awkward. And then it's like this fucking guy. And now you start to like dislike that person. Yeah. That's not actually going to get you the outcome that you want.
Yeah. So how would you call them out? If somebody changed their personality, like what would you say?
I just say to them, oh, look, guys, you don't need, we're here to work together,
Yeah.
right? So, like, have I done something wrong, in the last 5 minutes? Like, we were just having a really good time, but all the laughter's gone. Let's relax. Like, this is meant to be fun.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll say, look, buying a car isn't meant to be stressful. It's meant to be fun.
Yeah.
And, do you like the car? Let's bring it back to the basics.
Yeah. Do you want the car? Do you like the car?
Yeah.
Cool.
Like,
let's figure it out.
Let's work it out. Right? We can work on this problem together.
Yeah.
But if you don't, and then it just becomes, nah, give me this or I'm out.
Okay.
And it's like,
yeah.
So yeah, like another.
It's people. We have similar experiences where like entitlement makes me not want to give you what you want.
Yeah.
It's like some people might fold, and I think a lot of people are kind of used to the idea of the customer's always right, and so they go to return something at David Jones and they complain enough, and the person just does it.
Yeah.
Right? Because they don't care. It's not their business.
Yep.
But like when you're speaking to the business owner of somebody who has interest, like they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So if you approach me nicely, and you tell, like we have people in the treatment program who something happens, something will happen, life will, they'll come off their fixed interest rate, and they're like, shit, I can't afford treatment. I've paid for this. Can I get a refund? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Like, here you go, full refund. And then in other cases where someone just feels entitled to something, and it's like, well, no, like, explain to me why. And so like it never like not being nice, like it just never works.
Yeah.
It always does. It never works in your favor. Some people might fold, but then most people won't. Most business owners will be like, no.
Yeah.
Like I no,
You never want the conversation to become about principles.
No,
because like
yeah.
when it's about principles, it's become combative straight away.
Yeah.
Right. I was thinking about this for whatever reason. Like this is where my mind goes. I was like hanging up the washing, and I was thinking about this idea that, there's a balance between doing what's right and also doing what's fair. Because sometimes, you might be right, but it might be really unfair to the other person for you to be that right.
Yeah.
And so like
you always like give a bit of grace, right? Like if you can, like you give grace, and you're like, okay, well,
yeah,
I know I'm in my right to do this, but I won't.
Yeah.
Like, and that's good.
It's
a good way to operate.
Being human.
Yeah, it's being human. Yeah, you can be ruthless, but like it always comes back somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, when you went and started this other thing, did Jess say anything to you? Was she like, what are you doing?
No, she was fine. Jess, like she works for Humanly, right? Yep. So she does a lot of our admin and supports me like in that business, and like she sees like what goes into it and how it is, and it's funny because like she's learnt a lot about business. So she's really supportive. Yeah, Jess is good.
And then when it comes to obviously managing your personal relationship, obviously being husband and wife, and then working together, is that difficult?
Not really.
No.
I do prefer to work in separate spaces like this. Like I have my own office. She works from home. That helps because like otherwise you're in each other's pocket the whole time. It can become a bit stressful. Mm-hmm. But no, not really. Like I've been really good at like not letting work affect. Like when work time is over, it's over.
Yeah.
I kind of I don't know if I've practiced that because I've always worked from home or remote or like so I've had to learn like okay, time to stop now. It's 9 p.m. We're not talking about work. So I tend to be able to like switch on and switch off when I really need to. I think that's a bit of a gift. Like when I'm working, I'm solely focused on work and I can focus 100% on it. And then when I'm not, I don't want to be at all. I can't do like the in between. I'm not like the person with like 20 tabs open. It's like I need one and then next and then next. Like I compartmentalize things.
Yeah.
Which I think really helps. So yeah, no, it doesn't really affect our relationship in a negative way. It's actually positive because I think as a business owner, like you go through struggles differently to like someone who's an employee. And so those ups and downs of emotionality, like sometimes you have a bad day, sometimes you have a good day. And she sees that now, like from the inside out. And so she can understand me better and understand our situation better, which I think will only help us in the future. Even if she in the future doesn't work for Humanly, I think it'll be better for our relationship because she'll understand how the business runs and how stressful it can be some days.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy.
Yeah, I think there's also, that element of being able to differentiate the action from the person as well.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I've been thinking a lot about this lately. because, you know, when I'm trying to talk to my kids about it, right? So as an example, you know, there's a kid in one of their schools that swears a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just like, you know, you're trying to explain to your kids, okay, like I use the example of like these words exist, right? And I'm happy to talk to you about those words and what they mean and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, we don't often use that in day-to-day conversation because it wouldn't be polite and trying to explain that to them, right? And it was funny because one of my kids said to me the other day, is like, oh, this person's a bad person because they use the bad words. And then I had to, like, I started thinking about it a lot, and I was like, okay, hang on a second. Let's be very careful about how we think about this, right? Because I sort of think, and this is, you know, it's a very slippery, it's a difficult one to articulate, because it's like I went back to this idea that, okay, well, there's no, like, when you think about it, technically nobody's a bad person per se. It's their actions that are bad, right? And then because if somebody has multiple bad actions, then you then assume that person is a bad person, but it's just their actions that are bad. And like, I guess, you know, when we think about like the idea of God and forgiveness and all this sort of stuff, like that's why I was starting to think a lot about this concept of that, you know, inherently people aren't good or bad. It's their actions that are good or bad.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know why I brought it up, but I figured I might as well get your perspective on it, right? Like, because I've just been thinking a lot about this lately.
Yeah, like it's, oh man, it's a hard one, because it's like everyone has moments where we do things that we wish we didn't, or we know aren't right, and we do them anyway. And that's why God forgives, right? Because humans are fallible. That's the whole point. It's like He gives you grace to forgive you for your sins because you are going to sin. Like that's just an expectation that we have of all humans. But like I think what makes somebody bad is if they don't strive, if they don't realize those, like if somebody operates in a way where they're constantly doing bad actions and never want to improve or reflect on those bad actions, you can become a bad human by way of character. It becomes a habit to do bad things. And so then most of your actions become bad.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like, well, then you're essentially a bad human. You're corrupt. Yeah. Like you've corrupted yourself through action because you've created a habit now. So if somebody like is a bully when they're growing up, and then they grow up to be a bully, and then they abuse their wife, and then they abuse their children, it's like, well, you've become corrupt. You've corrupted yourself through habit. But like if you do bad things and then you reflect on that and you do feel a sense of shame and a sense of guilt and a sense of like, okay, maybe I need to like work on this. You should be able to do that within yourself. Nobody should have to tell you, hey, you did that thing. It's like sometimes like, oh, fuck, I probably shouldn't have said that. Or
you're so right, actually, because when I think about it with kids, it's like you can, you know, that guilty look.
Yeah.
It's like they know.
They know, yeah.
Right? There is actually like a little conscience or moral compass in there that they know when they've done something wrong.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's when it comes to talking to my kids about it, it's like trying to educate them on, well, what is that feeling?
Yeah.
Right? You know, it might be guilt, but like you also might be feeling embarrassed.
Yeah.
And you might be feeling this or shame or like there's other words that are attached to that.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, okay, well, how do you
deal with it? What do you do?
Yeah.
Do you bring it up?
Yeah.
Do you ignore it? Do you brush it under the rug? Do you know what I mean? Like there's so many ways. And I think like ultimately it comes down to like, there's only really two choices. You can either approach the problem or you withdraw and you kind of ignore it. And so like if a kid does something wrong and they know that they've done something wrong, they're either going to own up to it. Like, hey dad, sorry for whatever, hitting my brother, or they're going to ignore it, pretend it never happened, and then next week they do it again, and then they ignore it and pretend it never happened, and so like you train, you reinforce behavior. That's what you do. Like neuroplasticity is reinforcing behavior. That behavior can either be good or it can be bad.
Yeah,
it's like if you continuously do bad things and you get away with it, and it services you somehow, well then you're going to continue doing it.
Yeah.
If there's no repercussions for it, you're going to continue doing it.
Yeah.
We're talking about this with Rob yesterday. There was a kid in jiu-jitsu who's like a bit of a bully. And he's like in that awkward stage where like he can't do the kids class because he's too big, but he's too small for the teenage class and he gets bashed. So Rob put him in the teenage class and he started teasing the kids. Oh, you're fat, you're this, you're that. And the kids smashed him, like And I was like,
that's a big call.
And I was like,
go and like start
I know, but I was like, that's great.
Bash you.
Let him keep bashing him.
Yeah.
Don't take him out of the class.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he needs, because he needs to learn that behavior is bad and there's consequences. That's the only way he'll stop.
Mm.
You know, but instead the parents pulled him out of the class.
Wow.
And so, well, now it's like, okay, well, every time I do something bad and I get consequences, mummy and daddy will save me.
Yeah.
That's just what you've taught the kid now.
Yeah.
So what type of adult are they going to grow up to be?
Yeah.
You know? So it's like there's bad actions. I think like consequence. I don't know. I'll see. I don't know what type of parent I'm going to be. Like when we have kids, I think about this a lot with Jess, and I talk about it, and like, I'm like, I wonder what type of parent I'll be, and like how our children will be, because all their personalities are going to be unique and different, and like how we'll have to deal with that. But yeah, I'm very curious. I think it's all well and good to like talk about it, but until you're a parent yourself, you really don't know.
It's problem solving again.
It's problem solving again. Yeah, it's like, oh shit, how am I gonna? Yeah, it'll be really interesting. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, if people want to find you, so give your socials a bit of a plug.
Marko Papuckovski, Marko's Daily Dose on Instagram, Marko with a K, Marko Papuckovski on YouTube, Facebook, everywhere, really. It's like unique name.
And
one-on-one.
Humanly, is that?
Humanly, yeah. H-U-M, Human L-I, Humanly Wellness on Instagram. If you want to chat with me, just put through an application in the notes section. When you put it through, just say, I heard you on Johnny's podcast, and I'll take the call. Because we do have another person that takes calls, but I'll take the call if I know it's from your podcast.
All right, sweet. And if people want to reach out for sales processes and things like that?
Same thing. Just shoot us a message, yeah. Shoot me a message on socials or email. And my email's everywhere on there. And we'll see if we can help.
All right, beautiful. Good to catch up. And if you missed the first episode I did with Marko, find it. I don't know, it's somewhere in there. I can't remember what episode it was. It was a couple of years ago, but it's there if you want to find out more about Marko's history, training, TriStar, all that sort of stuff. I think we talked about in the first one. So
awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.